as we go into the late
17
evening and
million
overnight
people.
hours, most of those
That is
storms
the
will fall
number sitting
apart.
under
And then
a
as we
heat
go
alert
into
right
Friday,
now
there will
across
be
the
another
American
risk
South.
of severe weather. And
Today,
I do think we could
August
see a few
20th,
severe storms over there in
2026,
the Midwest.
and that
Right now, the
number is not
HRRR model
shrinking.
has a little
The National
cluster
Weather
forming
Service
during the
issued
early
its
to mid-afternoon
extended
hours
forecast
just to the
discussion
west
just
of
hours
Chicago,
ago, and the
even with a
language
low
they used was
tornado
not
risk in
vague.
place, and in
A
addition to
strong and
damaging wind
persistent
gusts
upper
as that
high
moves
will
towards
maintain hazardous
Davenport, down
heat
towards
across the southern
Peoria,
tier
and then there might
through
be another
next
storm
week.
or two out there in Nebraska tomorrow
That is not a
afternoon.
warning about the
The
weekend.
HRRR doesn't show
That
much
is a warning
happening there,
about the
but the
next 10
Rufus model
days.
has a
And
little
I'm
bit
going to
more
show you
interesting of
exactly why the
activity
models
forming
agree
here with
who is in the
another
most
supercellular
dangerous
2
window right
possible
now.
across
What the
central
overnight
and eastern
numbers are doing
Nebraska.
that almost no
Again,
one is
producing
talking about.
damaging wind
And what
gusts,
is coming
large
on the
hail,
other
maybe
side
even
of
a
this
low
dome that
tornado
deserves
threat.
serious
And then
attention
overnight,
before it
Friday into
arrives.
Saturday morning, we're
Before we
expecting
get
more
deep into
storms
the
to
data,
fire up over
here
near
is a quick
Kansas
note.
City, which could lead
If
to an
you're new
additional
here, my
damaging
name
wind
is Arthur,
threat.
and
And
this
then
is
on
US Weather
Saturday, I'm
Threat.
not expecting
This
anything that
channel exists
organized,
for
but I do
exactly
think
one
a
reason,
stormy day is
to
going to be
cut
ahead
through
for
the
the
noise
Ohio
and give you the
Valley and
numbers
East
that
Coast,
actually matter during
mostly
events
talking
like this
about
one.
isolated to
We
widely
update
scattered
daily during
thunderstorms with
situations this serious,
isolated
and
downburst
the next
damaging winds
72 hours
possible.
matter.
Otherwise, the severe weather threat, I
Let's
think, for
get into the
Saturday
data.
is going to be quite
Here is
low.
the core
And
picture
overall,
as of
the
this
risk
morning.
of flash
A
flooding is not
double-barreled
nearly as
heat
high as
dome
it
is
has been for
anchored
the
across
last
the
few
southern
days, but we do
United
have a slight
States.
risk of
Not
excessive
one center
rainfall
of
from
high
New York
pressure,
City back into
two.
Virginia Beach.
Two
So
separate
take caution on the
interlocking
roadway
ridges, both
later today,
reinforcing
and
each
then
other, both
tomorrow
refusing
we'll
to
shift
move.
all the way down into
The Weather
Salisbury through
Prediction Center
Fayetteville,
flagged
Raleigh,
this
and
structure in
Columbia,
its
where
forecast
isolated to
discussion this
scattered
morning.
flash flooding will be
When
on the table.
forecasters
And then
reach
after
for
this little
language like
severe weather
double-barreled,
marathon
it
over the
means
next
they're
few days, we
genuinely
are
worried
going to
about the
see a
persistence of what
major
they are
weather
seeing.
pattern change that is going
A
to
single
bring a
dome can
huge cool
sometimes
down
be
by the
nudged
middle of next
eastward by an
week.
approaching
But beginning
trough.
with what's happening this
Two
weekend, a
interlocking
high-pressure
centers of
system
high
will
pressure
continue to
require a
stay
much
right over
larger
the four
scale
corner
atmospheric
states. A
disruption
big
to
dip in the jet
dislodge.
stream will arrive
And
on
right now,
Saturday.
the
That is
models are
going to
not
push
showing that
cold
disruption
Canadian
until
air
late
back
August
into
at
the
the
United
earliest,
States,
and even that
mainly
is
impacting
uncertain.
the Midwest, Ohio
Let me
Valley,
walk you
and
through
East
what that
Coast.
looks like on
Really
the
nice
ground right
weather's on the
now.
horizon for this weekend and early
Heat
next week,
indices.
but
That
we're
is the
going to
number
even
I
have a
want you to focus
stronger
on
cold
first,
blast by the
not the
middle
air
of next
temperature
week
alone,
as we continue
the
to have
heat
this
index.
northwesterly
What your
flow
body
coming out of
actually
Canada.
feels when
And
the
I do think
humidity
around
wraps
Wednesday
around
and
you,
Thursday is
and
when
your
we are
sweat
going to get
cannot
our
evaporate
bigger
fast
shot
enough to
of
cool you
cold air,
down.
which could lead to
Across southern
temperatures as
Georgia
low
this
as the
week, heat
40s and
indices
even
reached
30s for low
110
temperatures in
degrees,
parts of
coastal
Wisconsin and
South
Michigan
Carolina
right around Wednesday and
110,
Thursday. So
the
it's
Florida
actually going to get
Panhandle
relatively
110,
chilly here
Memphis and the
across the
Mid-South
Midwest and the
region
Northeast, especially for the
110.
month of
The
August.
combination of
Meanwhile,
heat and
high
humidity
pressure
in
will
those
continue to
areas
stay
is not
right
a
in place
forecast.
across the southern
Those are
plains,
verified
which means areas
observations
like
from this
Texas and
week's
Oklahoma,
records.
you guys are
And the
probably not
overnight
going to see
lows
much
are where
relief
this
anytime
event turns
soon.
from
It is going to stay
uncomfortable
hot, I
into
think, through the end of
genuinely
August. And then
dangerous.
as we go into the first week of
Urban areas
September,
across the
a lot
south
of
last night
uncertainty
did
there.
not drop
But
below
the
80
GFS model
degrees,
showing quite
not
the storm system in the
75,
first week
not
of September.
72,
With that said,
80.
too early to tell
That
what's going to
means
be
a
happening
human
by
body
that
that has
point.
been
Now,
under
in terms of the
physiological heat
actual
stress all
temperatures,
afternoon
this is what it
gets
looks like for
exactly
tomorrow.
zero
We're going to have
recovery
some
time.
places near Oklahoma
The
City
8
and
hours
Dallas
that the
getting
body
near
is supposed to use to
110.
cool its core
But as we go
temperature
into
are
the
gone.
weekend, again, a shot
Day
of cold
after
air
day
will make
after
its
day,
way
that
across the
compounding
Midwest
stress
and also across
accumulates.
the Ohio
That
Valley.
is why
Low
heat
temperatures
kills
for
more
Sunday
Americans
morning
every
should
year,
fall into the mid to
and
low
tornadoes,
40s in parts of
hurricanes, and
Wisconsin.
lightning
So some nice
combined,
weather is actually on the
according to
horizon
National
for
Weather
these
Service
areas. But again,
statistics.
heat is just
And
going to
this
be the
summer,
story for
we
the
are now
next
deep
week or
into
two.
that
If you live in
accumulated
Texas and
danger.
Oklahoma, really
Here
no
is who
relief
needs
is
to
on the
watch this the
horizon there.
most.
By the middle and end
If
of the
you live
week,
in
we are
Texas,
expecting a
and
nice
I
little
mean
cool
all of
down across the
Texas,
Great Lakes
from the
and
Gulf
also the
Coast to the
Northeast.
Panhandle,
One thing that's pretty
you're in the
crazy is that the
primary
GFS
zone.
during that first week
Oklahoma,
of September
Arkansas,
has low
Louisiana,
temperatures getting as low
Mississippi,
as the
Alabama.
mid-30s
Every
in
single one of
Pennsylvania and
those
New York.
states is under an
Granted,
active
this is
heat
2 weeks from
advisory
now.
or
Things are
extreme heat
definitely going to
warning as of
change,
this
but it is a
morning.
good reminder that
Georgia,
we are
the
not far
Carolinas,
away from
Tennessee.
fall beginning, and we're going to start to see
The
some cold
NWS
fronts
office
and
covering
actual
West
legit
Tennessee
cold fronts
confirmed this
impact
week
the
that
United
heat index
States not
values
too
in
far
that
from
region
now.
are
And I really
expected to
don't
top
talk about the
100
Pacific
degrees
Ocean
every day
hardly
through
ever when
today,
it comes to tropics,
August
but it is
20th.
pretty crazy that we
Their
have
language this
another
week was
chance of a
direct.
tropical
Little
system
nighttime relief
heading
from the
towards
heat means urban
Hawaii
areas may
over
not
the
cool
next
below
7
80
days. There is
degrees
a
Fahrenheit.
90% chance of
That is the
formation
official
within the next
government
48
forecast.
hours. With that
That is
said,
the
the
National
odds of
Weather
this
Service
actually
telling your
becoming
city
a
to prepare
hurricane
for
again,
tonight.
not nearly as high
Here
as
is
what we
one
just had with
specific number I want to
Lala.
highlight
However,
before we
a
move
lot
on.
of the hurricane models
Miami
do have
hit
this
100
coming
degrees
awfully
earlier
close
this
to
week.
Hawaii. This is
The
the
second time in
HAFS
recorded
A-model
history,
run. We also
dating
have the
back to
B-model run, which has
1895,
a much
that
weaker
Miami has
tropical
reached that
system here,
temperature.
and then a few other
The
model
only other
runs
time
currently
was
have
July
this really
21st,
not even existing
1942.
over the next few days, like
84
the
years between those two
HWRF
events.
model, and then there's
That is the
one other one,
timeline
the
we just
HMON,
collapsed.
which has it going
Fort
right
Smith,
near Hawaii,
Arkansas
but
hit
not making
109
landfall.
this
But it'll
week.
be very interesting to see
Little
how
Rock
this
hit
evolves.
107.
I think no matter what
Tuscaloosa
happens, this
hit
is definitely not
102.
going to be nearly
Savannah
as
reached
intense as
99.
Lala.
These
Lala
are not
became a
model
Category 4
outputs.
yesterday,
These are verified
but I
station
do think a
observations
tropical
from the
storm,
National
maybe
Weather
even low-end
Service's
hurricane,
network.
can't be
In
ruled
South
out.
Florida
As always,
today,
thank you all
right
again so
now,
much for
the
watching
heat
today's
advisory is in
forecast. If
effect
you are
from
new to the
11
channel,
a.m.
make sure
through
to
7
subscribe down
p.m.
below.
with
Also,
heat
a huge
index
shout out
values
to all the
potentially
members of our
reaching
channel. We would
112
not be able to
degrees.
do what we do
The
here on this channel
NWS
without all
office
of
in
you
Miami
guys, and a
classified
huge
the heat
special
risk
shout
for
out to our
Miami-Dade and
Velocity
Broward counties
sponsors.
as
If you
major
want to
to
become a member of the
extreme.
channel, it is the
Level
join
4
button
of
down
4.
below.
That
We
is
will
the
likely
top
have another
tier
video
classification.
tomorrow, potentially a
The
live
language from
stream
the
today,
National
so
Weather
stay
Service for
tuned for the
level
channel,
4 is
and we will see you
explicit.
in the next
Serious
video or
danger to
live
anyone
stream.
without adequate cooling or hydration. Hello, everybody.
Not
We got
just
some
the
wild
elderly, not
changes
just
coming our way,
outdoor
including
workers,
a wild start
anyone.
to June that includes temperatures
Now
that'll
let
be
me
some
walk you
20
through the
degrees
coming
below
days,
where we should
because
be
the
for this
data
time of the
clearly
year.
shows this
And
event
we're
is
talking
not
about more
peaking and
storms, some of which
receding
could
in a
be
clean
severe.
arc.
So if you're new to the
It
channel,
is
please
building
like
and
this
sustaining.
video. Go
Today
ahead,
is
hit that
Thursday,
subscribe
August
button
20th.
and turn on those
The
notifications.
WPC confirmed this morning that the
as
heat
to what's
persists
coming our
across
way
the southern
because,
tier,
frankly
while a
speaking,
cold air
we
mass
do have a
advancing from
lot coming
Canada
our way,
pushes
which
into the
includes
northeastern
the risk
United
for some
States.
stronger storms.
That
You can see
temperature
storms
boundary
already
between
bubbling
cool
up in
northern
the heat
air
of the
and
day.
the
We're getting
brutal
hot
southern
yet
dome is
again. That's
generating heavy
fueling the
rain and
daily
flash flooding
onslaught
across
of
the
just
Ohio
the
Valley and
steady
mid-Atlantic
downpours that are
today.
going to continue for
If
so
you're in
many.
Virginia,
Let me show you
Maryland,
what's
West
happening
Virginia,
right now
or
because we got
Pennsylvania,
stormy
the
conditions,
severe
and for
weather
some,
risk is
it
real.
may very well take
Damaging
until late
winds and
this
flooding
evening
are the
into
primary
the early part
threats
of the
along that
overnight
frontal
that you
boundary.
see your first
But for
downpour for
everyone
the
in
day.
the south,
And because of the heavy tropical nature of the rain that could be coming in
that
from
front
Atlanta
does
to
not
Greenville up
reach
through
you.
Charlotte,
The
Mecklenburg,
dome
there's a
holds.
chance that some of these showers and
Friday,
thunderstorms
August
come in
21st.
one after
The front
another,
pushes
which
into
could
the
lead to a
Atlantic
level
and
2
weakens.
risk for
Severe
flooding. Now, I
thunderstorms
do
remain
see the
possible across
flooding
the upper
risk
Midwest and
slowly
Central
abating as
Plains
we
as
go
a
throughout the
shortwave
week.
energy
Notice how
disturbance
it's
slides
back
through.
through South
For
Alabama
Texas,
into
Louisiana,
the far
Mississippi,
western
Alabama, the
panhandle of
heat
Florida
index
into New
continues to
Orleans as we
build
go
into the
into
afternoon
Tuesday.
hours.
Wednesday, it's retreating
AccuWeather's
a little bit
forecast
farther
as
to
of
the
today
west,
carries
still in the
specific
western
language about this
Carolinas,
period.
but by day
Dangerous
4,
heat
this will be
dome to
Thursday,
rain across
Friday,
the
we're
south with
finally
little
starting to
relief
see
through
at least
Monday.
it not be
Monday,
as
August
stormy.
24th.
As far as
Saturday,
severe weather is
August
concerned, we had a couple of
22nd into
tornado
Sunday,
warnings
August
yesterday,
23rd.
even in a level
The
1 risk. You
WPC
can get
extended
that.
forecast
That level 1
discussion
risk sits
issued
up through
early this
Atlanta,
morning
through
and valid
Athens,
through
but
August
generally
27th
speaking, we're just talking about
is
thunderstorms
unambiguous.
without widespread
Hazardous
severe
heat will
weather
continue
across
across the
most of the
southern
upstate
plains
through
and lower
Charlotte,
Mississippi
Mecklenburg,
Valley.
into
A strong and
Charleston, South
persistent upper
Carolina.
high will maintain
Can't
those
rule out those
conditions.
daytime thunderstorms, but the
Monsoonal
worst
moisture
risk
is
is going to be here
forecast to
across
stream
South
northward
Georgia,
under the ridge
back
for
to Alabama,
scattered
and even
storms
that's a
across
level
the
1
Intermountain
risk.
West and the
Let me map
Rockies.
it out with a brand new
But that
computer model.
moisture
This
does
is the
not get
latest
through
high
to the south.
resolution.
The ridge
And again, let me
deflects
know
it
where in the
west.
comment
The
section you're
south
watching
stays
from
dry.
right now,
The
and kind of
south
what your
stays
question
hot.
is.
The
Because I know
latest
this pattern has
GFS
a lot
run
of
and the
people just
European
kind of trying
model
to
are in
figure out what in the
substantial
world do
agreement
we
on
do.
this track through
By
this
2
weekend.
o'clock, most
When
of the
both
western
major
Carolinas are
deterministic
still
model
relatively
systems
dry.
point the same
Most of the
direction with
action's
similar
happening
intensity,
kind of fired up
I
as
pay
a
close
result of the
attention.
sea breeze
They are
pushing
not
inland. So
diverging
that's
on
kind of where
this.
things
They are
start today,
converging.
but it's not where it
And then,
finishes.
here is where the
see what
forecast
happens
takes a
this
turn
evening,
that I
with
think
most of us
deserves
seeing
its own
some
moment of
late-day
attention.
storms, just like yesterday.
The
Now,
Climate
most of the
Prediction
more
Center
volatile
Hazard
action
Outlook.
looks like
Listen
it's
to
south
these
of
dates
I-20 from
carefully.
Birmingham to
August
Metro Atlanta
26th
south
through August
through Columbus
28th.
and Macon.
The
But as the day goes
CPC
on,
flags a
that
high
kind of
risk of
moves up
extreme
toward the
heat,
north, migrating.
covering
Here's 8
parts of the
p.m.
desert
We got some pretty
southwest,
big
southern to
storms moving
Rockies,
into Abbeville,
southern and
where my
central
Greenwood and
plains,
Abbeville
and
folks
adjacent
at
areas of
Anderson.
the Mississippi
This is
Valley.
likely to be making some
High
noise as it
risk,
rolls on through
not
8,
moderate.
9, 10
High.
o'clock. 11 o'clock, some
August
pretty
30th,
steady and heavy
a
rain
moderate
across a
risk
good bit of
stretching from
western
the
North
southwestern
Carolina
Rockies to the
through the
lower
upstate of South
Mississippi Valley.
Carolina. And our
September
both of our
1st,
models
a
that are
slight
high
risk from
resolution
California and the Great Basin to the
focus in
coastal
on
southeast.
that time frame
September
are showcasing
1st,
this potential for some
similar.
heavier action
That is
later
not
in
this
the day.
week.
Then you go into your
That is
Tuesday, we
next
start
week.
much like we have been.
What we are
A little bit of
looking at is
drizzle for
not a
some,
temporary
most of
heat
us are
surge
dry,
followed by a
but
clean
as the day
break.
goes on, we fire
What
those
we are
storms
looking
up
at is
yet
a
again.
multi-week heat
And once
siege
more, we could
with a
have some
sustained
pretty
upper level
volatile afternoon
high that
thunderstorms
the
on
models keep
Tuesday.
rebuilding in the
And we
southern
do
tier
the
every
same
time a
exact thing
shortwave tries
Wednesday,
to
starting
dislodge
off
it.
rather tame,
That is what
then
the
exploding as the
CPC
day
data
goes
is
on.
saying.
But we need to
They
talk
do not
about
write
June
those hazard
here,
outlooks
because
casually.
June is coming
Now
in
let me
pretty
pull
wild.
back and
Look at
explain what is
this. Not
actually
only
driving
cooler
all
than
of
normal,
this,
but
because
significantly
understanding the
cooler than
mechanism
normal.
is what
Temperatures
separates
are
a weather
expected for
channel that
most
is
of the
genuinely
Carolinas,
useful
Georgia.
from one that just reads you a
These
list of
are
temperatures.
numbers that we don't see that
The
often.
structure responsible
So this
for this event is a
for the first
potent
few
mid-level
days of
high-pressure
June, but
center
you extend
positioned
that
across
out
the southern
to
and
the
southwestern
first whole
United
week of
States.
June. Most of the
High-pressure
southeast,
systems act
with the
as
exception
atmospheric
of
lids.
central Florida south,
Warm
are
air
going to
normally
be
rises
below
from the
normal
surface,
temperature-wise.
carries
And there's
heat
a big
upward,
reason for this,
and
and the weather
disperses
pattern
it.
that's setting up
When a
with the
high-pressure
big
system is
omega
strong enough,
block, as
it
we call
suppresses
So
that rising
let's look
ocean
closer
entirely.
that pattern
The air
and
beneath
the rain,
cannot
because
ascend, cannot cool, it simply accumulates
whenever
heat
you're
at
going
the
to be that much
surface
cooler
day
than
after
normal,
day.
you are
In
dealing
the
with some
meteorology
sort of pattern that's
community, this
causing
is sometimes
that. So
called heat
let me
dome
just map it
loading.
out through the next 7
Each
days
successive
for
day,
rain.
the surface atmosphere
We've got
bakes
an
a little hotter than the
an
one before
additional
because
2
the
to
lid
3
never
inches
opens.
likely
Now
for
add
most
drought to
everybody,
that picture.
but close to 4 to
Most
5
of Texas,
inches will be likely
Oklahoma,
in
and the
many
central
more
and southern
areas. So
plains are
this just
experiencing
says
drought
through the
conditions
next week
right
we got
now.
that. Beyond
Here is
that,
what that does
going
to the
into
physics.
next week,
Soil
I don't
moisture
see
normally absorbs
significant,
incoming solar energy through latent heat,
rain,
the energy
but
required
rather
to convert liquid
cooler,
water into water
drier
vapor.
air settling in
That is a
for so
cooling
many.
process.
And it's a
When the
result
soil
of
is
the
dry,
omega
no
block,
liquid
which seems
water
to be
exists
setting
to
up. What you're
evaporate.
looking at here
All of
is
that
the upper
incoming
level
solar
pattern,
radiation
and
converts
this
directly
sets
into
up
sensible
shop as
heat
we go
instead,
deeper in the forecast.
atmospheric
I'm going to map
temperature.
this out
The land
and show
becomes a
you what's
radiator
happening.
rather
So
than
you
a
see that there
sponge.
almost looks like
So
an
drought
omega,
makes the land
the
hotter.
Greek symbol.
Hotter
Down
land
there,
strengthens
up
the ridge
here,
of
and
high
then down
pressure above
right
it.
here. So
A stronger
that
ridge
pattern
suppresses
oftentimes
rainfall.
leads to pretty
Less
stagnant
rainfall
weather,
deepens the
and
drought.
it wants to
That
just
is a
leave
self-reinforcing
itself
cycle.
where it's at. It doesn't want
Once
to
it takes
budge.
hold,
There's
it is
like
very
almost a
hard to
better look
break
at it.
without
You
a
see,
significant
looks like
and
two eyes,
sustained
one over New York
large-scale
City,
pattern
one over
shift.
Utah.
Over
And in the middle,
3.3 million
the
acres
pattern
have
just
burned
remains
across the United
persistent
States so
and
far in
pretty stagnant.
2026,
So as we
well
go into
above the
Monday,
seasonal
Monday
average,
night, Tuesday,
with the majority
pattern on the eastern
concentrated
half
in
of
the
United
west.
States is pretty
The
active.
thermodynamic
What
connection
that does
between
is bring
drought,
in some cooler
wildfire,
air
and heat
from the
domes
north,
runs
and
in
that's
both
going to allow things
directions.
just to be
Burning
quite
land
different
radiates
across a
additional
large part of the
heat.
southeastern
That heat
United States,
reinforces the
and
ridge.
lead to a
The
pattern
ridge
that's
prevents the rain
significantly
that would
cooler than normal.
extinguish the
Metro
fires.
Atlanta through
This is not a
Charlotte,
series of
down to
separate
Georgia,
weather events.
could be
It
15
is
to
one
20 degrees
interlocking
below
system.
where we should be for
This
this
is
time
the
of the year.
third significant
And it
heat
looks like
dome
that
to
ridge
impact the
wants to
central and
hold
southern
on
United
until the
States this
5th,
summer.
6th, or 7th
The
of
first covered the eastern US
June.
from
So
late
that
June
first week,
through
okay,
early
so
July.
is every day going to be cool?
The peak of that event,
No, but
June
watch this.
29th through
As
July
we go
5th,
deeper in the forecast,
saw Atlantic
the
City,
red
New
means
Jersey
warm, the
hit
blue means
106
cool, and look
degrees
at
on
this,
July
as we get
4th.
toward the end of May,
20 cities
first few
broke
days of
records in a
June,
single afternoon on July
we start to see
2nd,
some
including
of these numbers
Newark
start
at
to show up here,
104,
where,
Philadelphia
10,
at 103,
15,
Boston at
as much as
101,
20
and
degrees
Washington,
below
D.C.
normal
at
going into those first
102.
few days of June.
The
And it looks
second
like we
dome built
stay
over
that
the
way
west
until
through
we
late
get
July,
to the 8th
pushing
or 9th.
Phoenix and
So
Las Vegas well above
what does that actually
110
look
degrees
like? Well,
for
let's show you a couple of
consecutive
different models
days.
here.
And now this, the
And,
third
and the
dome,
wind direction,
anchored in the
that really
south,
kind of helps tell the
sustained
story
through
too.
August and into
Most
September.
of this week,
With each
what's
successive
happening here
dome, the soil across the
is
south
the
and plains
southeast
has
is
had
in
less time to
control
recover.
of a
Less
southerly
moisture,
wind, keeping
less
this muggy
capacity
heat
to
that's
buffer the
quite-
next round of
quite
heat.
warm, to
That
be
is
honest with
exactly
you.
what the
All right. Let's map
NOAA
this out
August
to
outlook
at least we're still
cited
getting
as one of
some
the
warm
two
days,
primary
especially the coast.
drivers
I
for
mean,
the confident
Charleston,
above
South
normal
Carolina is going to
temperature
be
signal across
91
the southeast
degrees
this month.
on Thursday.
The
Hot
second
and
driver
just
was warm
silly
coastal
humid,
waters
okay?
off the Gulf
But
and
that's about
Atlantic
to be
coasts.
replaced with a
Both factors are
significant
still
cool
fully
down.
in play.
Look at those winds trying to come in toward
Where does El
Friday.
Nino fit
And you get
into
into
all of
Saturday,
this?
Sunday. Look at
The
this.
Nino 3.4 region,
These are
the
50s
standard
and
benchmark for
60s
monitoring
showing
this
up.
climate
By
phenomenon,
Sunday into Monday,
is sitting
look at this. Dare I
1.3
say
degrees
cool?
Celsius above
You
normal,
got 40s
as of the
in
most
western
recent
North
weekly
Carolina.
reading from
You
NOAA.
got 50s setting
That places
up here,
the
and it's
current
because of this
event at
cool
moderate El
northeast
Nino strength.
wind that's coming in
The
and
National
undercutting
Weather
this.
Service
So
found El
a
Nino
cool
conditions
northeast
present
wind
as
on
early
Monday
as
means
June
many
11th of
areas
this
starting
year,
off in the 50s.
with the possibility
Forget
of a
cool
super El
weather.
Nino developing as
I
the
mean,
summer
this is
progresses.
jacket weather. 5
El
o'clock,
Nino's
your high
impact on
temperature
summer weather in the
69
south is
in Asheville
direct and
Greenville.
measurable.
Now in the
It
sun,
enhances
that's
the subtropical
fine,
jet
but
stream.
certainly not jumping
An enhanced
kind of
subtropical
weather.
jet carries more
75 for
warm,
Myrtle
moist
Beach,
air into the
77
southern
for a
United
high
States
in
from the
Charleston.
southwest and from
That's
the warm
crazy.
waters of the
Now
Gulf
look
and
at
the
Monday
tropical
night going into
Atlantic.
Tuesday.
More
We've got
moisture means higher dew
43
points.
degrees
Higher dew points
in
mean higher heat
Asheville,
indices for any given air
54 in
temperature.
Greenville.
Higher
And
heat
then that
indices mean greater
north-northeast wind
physiological
continues to do its
stress.
thing. We're talking highs
I think
in the
most people
70s and 80s.
fundamentally
It just stays
underestimate what a dew
about
point in the
5 to 10
mid-70s
to
does to the
15
human body.
degrees below normal.
When you
until
step
we get
outside in
to
Houston
late
or
week,
Baton
when we
Rouge
finally
or
start to
Savannah,
change those
and
winds.
the dew point
Wind
is
direction is
73 or
everything,
74
and that looks
degrees,
like we
you're
do flip it
breathing air
back around
behind
by
it
the
that is
end of the
functionally
week.
saturated.
But could there be a little
Your
wild
sweat has
card here?
nowhere to
Let's
go.
look at that.
Sits on
Tropical
your
storm
skin.
Arthur
Your core
still
temperature
showing
does
up in
not
our
drop.
computer
The
models
cooling
here.
mechanism
As we
has
go deeper
been
in the forecast,
neutralized.
it's not
You're not
really anything most
experiencing
of
the
us
air
should be worried
temperature.
about.
You're
Where I do
experiencing the
see,
heat index, and right
kind of
now those
raises,
heat index
an
values are
ire,
topping
to
110 across
is the
large
fact
portions
that
of the
some
south.
areas have already had too
That is
much
why the
rain,
National
and you get
Weather
a little
Service
weak low
does not
pressure
issue
system like
advisories
is
for air
shown here,
temperature alone.
really
They
consistently
issue
in the
them
modeling
for
here,
what the
getting
body
into
actually
Southwest Florida,
experiences, because a
from Cape
98
Coral to
degree
Key West.
afternoon with a 74 degree dew
onshore
point is
flow
medically very different
basically
from a
means
98
Miami,
degree
the
afternoon
Marathon to
with
the
a 50
Keys
degree dew
could
point.
have extra moisture.
The
One,
first
the
one
rip
is
currents and
potentially
the surf
lethal
would
for
be
someone
really
without
tough.
cooling.
So boating,
The
fishing,
second
anything
one is
down there would be
uncomfortable
tough,
but
and the
survivable
rip
with
currents.
shade
So
and water.
please, folks,
The
rip
South right
currents
now
scare
is
the heck out of
firmly
me
in the
as a
first
dad to
category,
3.
across an enormous
You know,
geographic footprint.
it's really kind of
Let me talk about the nighttime picture specifically, because I think this is being underreported, and it is the part of this event that concerns me the most. Cook County, Illinois confirmed 12 heat-related deaths in 2026, more than any year of the past decade, with all but one recorded during July alone. The climate analysis data from Nashville shows the city has experienced 28 more hot summer nights compared to 1970. Chattanooga has seen a 42-night increase in above-normal summer nights over that same period. Memphis, from 1970 to 2025, added 12 additional nights of above-normal temperatures in the June through August window. Those trends have not reversed in 2026. They have accelerated. When overnight temperatures stay at or above 86 degrees for a week or longer, and that is exactly what is happening right now across the urban cores of the South. The medical risk compounds in a way that a single afternoon heat reading does not capture. The body needs the night to recover. The core temperature needs to drop. Organs need reduced metabolic demand. When nights stay at 80 or above, that recovery does not happen. The next day's heat arrives before the body has had any chance to reset. Over multiple consecutive nights, the cumulative physiological debt becomes dangerous for healthy adults, not just for the vulnerable populations that normally command the most attention in heat advisories. This is why the National Weather Service, in its forecast discussions this week, specifically flagged the nighttime temperature concern. Their language was not about afternoon highs. It was about the floor that temperatures will not drop below. Urban areas may not cool below 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a medical statement dressed as a forecast. Let me now tell you what I'm watching on the models that has not yet made headlines, and I want to be careful here because this is still evolving. But the European ensemble mean as of this morning is keeping the ridge locked in place through the end of August with only modest erosion at the edges. The GFS ensemble spread is wider, which means there is more uncertainty in the GFS. Some members do show a faster breakdown of the pattern, some keep it locked. The European ensembles are generally more coherent and confident in the extended range, and right now they are telling a story of persistence. Not infinite heat, eventually a trough does come through, but the timing keeps getting pushed back in successive model runs. That is a pattern I recognise from previous sustained dome events. When the models keep delaying the break, they are usually right to do so. The one thing I am watching most carefully on the synoptic scale is the upper level highs position relative to the Gulf. As long as that ridge center stays positioned over the southwestern and south central states, it will continue to rotate Gulf moisture northward into the warm sector ahead of each attempted frontal intrusion. That northward surge of moisture keeps the dew points elevated. It keeps the heat indices dangerous, and it keeps funneling energy into any severe weather system that tries to develop along that frontal boundary. So the heat dome is not just making the south hot, it is also priming the atmosphere for severe weather episodes along its northern and eastern edges. That is a dynamic I will be covering in detail in tomorrow's update. Where does relief eventually come from? Based on what the models are showing, the most credible signal is from a trough that develops in the Pacific Northwest and then propagates eastward across the northern tier of the country in the late August to early September timeframe. That kind of large-scale pattern shift, the Pacific trough forcing the ridge to break down and retreat southward, is what the extended range models need to show consistently before I would feel confident telling you a specific date for the break. Right now, the models are not consistent on that timing. What they are consistent on is this. There is no clean break before August 25th, and possibly not before the end of August. For the South right now, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, the Carolinas, the single most important thing you can do this week is exactly what the National Weather Service is asking. Go to weather.gov, look up the current alerts for your county. If an extreme heat warning is in effect for your area, take it as seriously as you would a tornado warning. Heat is slower than a tornado, but it is just as dangerous, and it affects a far larger population. Limit outdoor activity during the peak afternoon hours. Drink water before you feel thirsty. Thirst is a late signal. If you're outdoors for work, take breaks in shade or air conditioning every 15 to 20 minutes during peak heat. And check on your neighbors. The person next door who has not answered in 2 days may not be okay. Have you personally been through something like that? A stretch where the nights just would not cool down, where the heat followed you indoors if you lost power, or did not have an air conditioner? Tell me your city in the comments. I want to know who is in this zone and what you're experiencing on the ground. Tomorrow I'll be watching the 4 a.m. WPC discussion and the early morning GFS and European model runs very closely. If the upper high shows any sign of weakening, or if there is any change in the CPC extended heat risk timeline, you will hear about it here first. Stephen Brown and Lone Frylock, thank you as always for your support as members of this channel. Your names are on screen in this video. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you have not already. Share this video with someone who is living through this heat right now in the South. They deserve to know what is actually coming over the next 2 weeks, and I will be here every day until this dome breaks. Now I want to zoom all the way out and tell you what this summer means in the longer context, because I think that framing matters for understanding how unusual what we are watching right now actually is. The NOAA Climate Prediction Center published its August 2026 outlook against the backdrop of an active El Niño advisory. El Niño conditions are present and expected to continue. When the CPC wrote its discussion for the southeast and southern mid-Atlantic's temperature outlook this month, they placed confidence above 50% for above normal heat. That is a high confidence level for a monthly temperature forecast. The signal comes from three converging factors: El Niño's enhancement of the subtropical jet, the dry soil conditions across the southern plains, and the anomalously warm sea surface temperatures along the Gulf Coast and Atlantic seaboard. When all three of those drivers point the same direction at the same time, the forecast office at NOAA does not hedge. They commit, and they committed to above normal heat for August across the southeast. The warm water component is something that does not get enough attention in heatwave coverage. Sea surface temperatures in the western Gulf and off the southeastern Atlantic coast are currently running above average for this time of year. When the wind flows inland from water that is unusually warm, it carries more moisture per cubic meter of air. That moisture is what keeps dew points elevate. That moisture is what keeps heat indices dangerous, even when the actual air temperature might be 1 or 2 degrees lower than its peak. And that moisture does not disappear when the sun goes down. It stays in the atmosphere through the night, which is part of why overnight lows are staying so elevated. Think about what that means for a city like Galveston, Texas, or a city like Savannah, Georgia, or a city like Jacksonville, Florida. These are coastal urban environments where the onshore flow from warm coastal waters feeds directly into the overnight temperature. The sea breeze that would normally carry cooler air inland in the evening is not cooler right now. It is warm. It is humid. It is adding heat rather than removing it. That is a completely different physical situation from a heat dome in, say, the interior southwest, where nights can drop dramatically because there is no warm moisture source feeding the overnight low. The Climate Shift Index, a research tool produced by Climate Central that quantifies how much more likely climate change has made a given heat event, assigned a Level 5 rating to several periods of this summer's heat. Level 5 means climate change made those heat conditions at least 5 times more likely than they would have been under pre-industrial atmospheric conditions. That is the highest possible level on that index. I'm not here to debate the science of attribution. I'm here to tell you what the data says, and the data from Climate Central, from NOAA, from the National Weather Service, and from the European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts all points to the same conclusion. This summer's heat pattern is not a statistical anomaly on the outer edge of historical variability. It is operating in a range that historical records from the 1900s could not have predicted. And yet, here is something that surprises me every time I look at the forecast maps. Large swaths of the northern Rockies, the northern plains, and the Great Lakes region are running below average for temperature this summer. Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota. The NOAA August outlook actually flagged increased odds of below normal temperatures in those states. So you have two completely different Americas sitting side by side this summer. The northern tier, where an omega block pattern and the El Niño cooling signal in the upper atmosphere are keeping temperatures suppressed, and the southern tier, where the subtropical ridge is dominating and the heat is relentless. That juxtaposition, cool north, brutal south, is not going to last indefinitely. Eventually, those two air masses will interact more directly. The boundary between them is where the severe weather threat lives. And as we move into late August and September, that boundary is expected to become increasingly active. Multiple shortwaves diving southward along that boundary, each one capable of triggering a round of severe thunderstorms as it slides across the deep layer of heat and instability that the dome has been building for weeks. That is the next chapter of this story. I'm going to be watching it very carefully, and I will cover it in detail as the models sharpen up. But right now, today, August 20th, the urgent and immediate story is the heat. 70 million Americans under alerts. A double-barreled dome that the DPC explicitly says is maintaining hazardous conditions through next week. a CPC hazard forecast that flags elevated risk through September 1st, and a set of nighttime temperature observations that are among the most consistently elevated this country has seen in a summer in modern recorded history. Here is the part I have been building toward, the part that connects everything I have told you today to a broader threat you need to understand heading into the final weeks of summer. The sustained heat dome over the south is not operating in isolation from what is happening in the tropics. Right now, the National Hurricane Center is monitoring activity in the Gulf Basin and the Western Caribbean. The connection between heat domes and tropical weather is direct. Warm sea surface temperatures in the Gulf are a prerequisite for tropical development, and right now the waters in the Gulf are anomalously warm for this time of year. The same ridge of high pressure that is cooking the land surface of the south is also suppressing the wind shear that would normally inhibit tropical development in the central Gulf. When that ridge eventually shifts, as it is projected to do after late August, the shear pattern across the Gulf changes with it. That transition window is something I'll be watching very closely over the next 2 weeks. I want to be clear here. The National Hurricane Center is not currently flagging an imminent threat to the continental United States from any known system. What I am telling you is that the atmosphere that produces record land temperatures and the atmosphere that generates tropical development in late August and early September are not separate systems. They are the same system at different scales. The warm water that feeds this heat wave is the same warm water that would intensify any tropical system that ventured northward out of the Caribbean or the Gulf. That is context. That is the bigger picture. And that is exactly the kind of information that you deserve to have before the calendar flips to September. The August to September transition window is historically one of the most active periods for late season heat and early tropical activity across the south. When a summer like this one, defined by persistent ridging, warm water, drought, and El Nino enhancement, runs deep into August without a significant pattern break, that energy has to go somewhere. Meteorologically speaking, the stored heat and the warm sea surface temperatures that built up all summer become fuel. For what? For whatever synoptic system eventually dislodges the ridge. And when that ridge finally breaks, when a strong upper level trough carves southward from Canada and forces the high pressure to retreat, the resulting atmospheric response across the Gulf and the southeast can be volatile. Severe weather along the boundary, tropical activity in the warm water left behind, and a rapid swing from heat to heavy rain across portions of the southern states. I am not forecasting any specific event from that transition, but I am telling you to pay attention to the pattern shift when it comes, and I am telling you to watch what happens in the Gulf after that shift occurs. Over the next 10 days, both the GFS and the European models are showing multiple disturbances trying to organize in the Western Caribbean and the Southern Gulf region. None of them are currently showing organized tropical development, but that 5-day to 10-day range is exactly where model uncertainty is highest, and exactly where I want to be watching the data most carefully. Here is the summary of everything I told you today, because I want you to leave this video with a clear picture. Today, August 20th, 2026, 70 million under heat alerts, double-barreled heat dome, double center of high pressure, refusing to move. Heat indices of 110 or higher documented this week in Georgia, South Carolina, the Florida Panhandle, and Memphis. Miami's second ever 100-degree reading, Fort Smith at 109, Little Rock at 107, urban overnight lows stuck at or above 80 degrees. The NWS has issued its forecast through August 27th with explicit hazardous heat language for the southern plains and lower Mississippi Valley. The Climate Prediction Center has flagged high extreme heat risk through August 28th, moderate risk through August 30th, and slight risk through September 1st. The European Ensemble and GFS Ensemble both support persistent ridging through at least August 25th, with uncertain but potentially delayed pattern breakdown. El Nino at moderate strength is reinforcing the subtropical jet and keeping moisture and heat flowing into the south. Warm coastal waters in the Gulf and Atlantic are preventing overnight recovery. 3 heat domes so far this summer, 70 attributed deaths. Cook County, Illinois, 12 heat fatalities in 2026, more than any recent year. A transition window in late August and early September that warrants attention for both severe weather and tropical activity. That is the full picture. That is what the data says. And I will be here tomorrow with the next update. One last number, 84 years. That is how long Miami went between its first and second observed 100-degree readings. This summer just erased that gap. The atmosphere over the American South is not operating in its normal historical range. The data is telling us that clearly. And I am going to keep bringing you that data every single day.